Okay, so this video is about taking the data out of Excel and putting it into um, MySQL using the phpMyAdmin interface. And this is what we went through in class, but as I said, I would record this video to show you all the details about it. So first thing to do is to go and grab um, your Excel spreadsheet, which I have right here. And as I mentioned in class, I had the ID columns here set up using a format which was the name of the tab or name of the sheet with an exclamation mark and then the ID number. And what I'd indicated in the class was that we kind of needed to remove the name of the tabs and the exclamation point in order to be able to have just integers in the ID columns, because that's what will actually go into the database. And it'll make it easier for us when we have the data in the database. So, so go ahead and do what you can to clean up and just generate basically the individual integers in these ID columns. And then if you've already done the data typing, that's great. If you haven't, follow the data typing here as an example. And we really don't need 32 for the data that happens to be in here. But in a general sense, it's not a bad idea to put more, like I said, more space in there than you need, but not a large amount that really isn't necessary. So while 32 might still seem big in this situation, from a practical standpoint, I think it's a good trade-off. Okay, so what we need to do first is to actually make sure that our database table is ready to receive this data. And so basically we have to set up a database table that has the same fields with these identifiers, with these names, sorry, and then also with these data types. So if I move this off to the side here and I go go into MySQL. Remember, I've launched MAMP. Okay, so I've got MAMP up, and I've pressed Start Servers, and both the servers are up. Then the MAMP page comes up, and remember, I click on Tools, phpMyAdmin, and then the database that I want you to create, I'm calling it ChemData. You can call it whatever you like, but if you call it ChemData, then it will match what I will show you in the next piece, which is, again, about how to get CakePHP set up and accessing the database. So anyway, in your database, you're going to need to create a table called conditions. Now, I had one, but I've deleted it out so I could do this demonstration. So, I want to create a table, and I'm going to call it conditions. And the number of columns should be the number of columns we have here, plus 1 for a date, which we're going to call updated. So I need 5 here, I need 6 in total. Click on Go, and then what you see is you come up with this interface that allows you to create each of the fields. I'm going to just move the left-hand column out of the way for a second so that we can make this easier to see. So first column is the ID column for conditions. And so I type in the name of the field. I'm going to change it to be a tiny int field, right? Because that's the data type that we've indicated here. And again, in reality, if you were expecting to have a lot of data in here, you'd have small int or maybe even bigger than that to be able to contain more than 256 values, which is what tiny int allows you to do. But in this particular case, that works. The length of 3 is really all about how it represents the data in this field when you see it on the website. So it could be 2, it could be 1, but there's not really any use to 2 or 1 because 256 has 3 digits to it. So that's really what you want to have. Okay, so you need to set some attributes on the ID column specifically. The first one is, like I had been indicating in class, I think it's a good idea, or I find it a really good idea, to use zero fill, which means put zeros before the numeric value, just to make it clear that this is an ID column and it stands out a bit. So unsigned zero field will mean that the values that can be in this ID column are anywhere from 000 to 255. We also then want to make this column the primary key column because this is where everything is going to be indexed off of. So under index, you select primary, and then you just hit go from this dialog box. And then finally, you click on the auto increment button here because you want it to, as you add a new row, auto increment this value. So again, that every value is unique. That will also that will be enforced by the fact that you've made this the primary index because it then requires the values in this field to be unique. All right, the other fields don't need quite as much TLC. So again, system ID is the identifier or the unique identifier from the system's sheet in Excel or table in MySQL. And again, that's also the same format as the ID. With the exception, we don't need to use a primary key. We've already got the primary key, and you should only have one. And we don't want to auto-increment it. We want it to be whatever the value is in the system table. I'm going to do the same thing for the property ID and for the unit ID. And again, you see, actually what I'm doing, putting this in the wrong place, aren't I? So I'm going to make sure I make it look the same. So let me do the value column here and change it to varchar 32. And we don't need anything in here when you have a varchar field. All right, and then unit. Let's see, tiny int 3, and zero fill. And then finally, the last column. Last field is going to be the updated field, and that should be of type timestamp. You should need to select the default to be the current timestamp, so that when a row is created, this field contains the date and time that it was created. And then also on update, so under attributes on update current timestamp. What that means is anytime you change something in one row, it updates the date time in this particular field. You give it a comment, table of conditions, and then you have to pick a collation. And we talked about Unicode. Again, in this case, my preference is to choose UTF Unicode CI, which is case insensitive. And then we save. If all goes well, then we have a table that is empty with the appropriate fields ready to receive data from Excel. Okay, so there's nothing in there. So now I go back to Excel, and in the conditions sheet, remember, I have to save as, and I'm going to save it as tab delimited text, and it only saves that particular sheet. So we'll call this conditions. And put it on my desktop just so I can see it easily. And when I do that, it says save active sheet. Continue. All right, and now the best thing to do is to quit out of the Excel file and don't save. That's just convenience. Okay, so my data is in this text file. If I open it up, you can see it here. Remember, what we need to do to make it easy to get the data into MySQL is I'm going to pull out the first row of values, and I'm going to change the tabs. You can use replace here, but I'm just going to edit them. Change the tabs into commas. And that means now I have a string that I can use when I do the import function in MySQL. So let's go do that. All right, so import. Browse and go click and get the file that you're going to use, which is on the desktop. Remember, we don't want the first two lines, which contain the field names and the data types. So we're going to go up to 2 there. And then we need to go and click under Format, CSV. And then in the options, we need to change The first one, column separated by /T, which stands for a tab character. And then finally, we paste in that string that we copied from here, which now tells it, okay, the data coming in should go into these fields sequentially. And then we hit go, and it's imported. And if we click Browse, then we see the data is now in the table. Again, you need to go through that process for each of the tables, so each of the sheets, to be able to get the data into MySQL. Okay?